Police and thieves in the street, fighting the nation with their guns and ammunition.
So, after all this money spent on getting your wife and you in court, and with 3 hearings, for her case to be thrown out, you were then offered a plea bargain and advised by your lawyer to plead guilty to the use of threatening words.
Yeah.
Now, the use of threatening words was something that you weren't investigated for.
No, there's no mention of them. No.
And nowhere in any of this evidence that they were presenting in court, including the hearsay evidence, this was all supposedly compiled in relation to harassment or stalking.
Well, if it is there, it's very well hidden because I can't find it.
Also, if you did use threatening words, you'd like them to show you where you did, I suppose.
Yeah, if they could show me where I've used them.
Right, so the only reason you pleaded guilty to the use of threatening words was to pay a small fine, basically a fixed penalty fine, get your computers back and your Garden Gnome back, and bring it to an end, but you claim that you are not...
It was having an adverse effect on my wife's health as well.
But you claim that you're not guilty of what you pleaded guilty to.
No.
You only did it as a plea bargain,
absolutely.
and because you were advised to do it by your lawyer.
Yeah.
So I can understand, with the pressure and everything else, and with your lawyer advising you to plead guilty to something that you did not do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they have spent all this money on an investigation into harassment and stalking. For how much was your fixed penalty fine?
It's not a fixed penalty fine, it's a court charge. They got back £165.
It's like a fixed penalty. It's a fixed sum.
Yeah.
It is a fixed sum.
I believe it was either 160 or 165.
So they've got 165 quid by a plea bargain for a case that's cost tens of thousands of pounds.
Yeah.
Well, is that good value for money for policing?
Well, I asked Martin Underhill, he says it's an operational matter.
An operational matter. Well, Martin Underhill isn't particularly operational himself. In fact, I'd say he's quite dysfunctional in his role, and hopefully the Dorset ratepayers will remove him, especially when we bring it to the attention of the public. Still remains the question of the CPS.
Oh yeah, well the CPS, that's another story, isn't it?
Now the CPS flew this by the seat of their pants. The CPS prosecutor was
Elizabeth
Valera. And I believe that the moment you pleaded guilty to an offence that she was not expecting you to plead guilty to, that they weren't even investigating, which was use of threatening words, right? She then...
That was her idea. She wanted that.
Oh, did she?
Because originally she wanted me to plead guilty to that other
Yeah,
thing.
but when they realised that they were going to have a hard job fitting you up with that, she then brought it down to that, for which your lawyer told you to plead guilty. And then, of course, you have the right of your lawyer giving mitigation. And she then stands up and is supposed to give facts to the bench in relation to the offence. And I believe she lied at that time. She stood up and understand it. When the CPS or the police advise the magistrates when someone pleads guilty to an offence, they're normally supposed to give them evidence appertaining to the offence that you pleaded guilty to.
You'd think so, wouldn't you?
Well, that's what normally happens. And I believe at this point, Ms Valera stood up and said, Mr Gill's wife was filming with a camera,
mobile phone.
Filming with a mobile phone to the alleged victim that you were supposed to have, your wife and you were supposed to have harassed or stalked. When in actual fact, the earlier video, which is the police biasness
and ignorance in
Pirates Lane, was shot by your CCTV, which is running 24-hour for your security in the lane outside,
that's right.
And showed that he was filming with a mobile phone. Your wife put her hand...
The footage that's on there is what he shot, because he uploaded it onto YouTube. I downloaded it.
Oh right, it wasn't from your CCTV.
There is footage from the CCTV on there. But the footage that she's talking about, he shot with his mobile phone.
Right, I know that, but there is also footage from your CCTV where she put her hand over his phone when he was...
We have got footage of that, but that's not on that particular
video. Oh right,
yeah.
Right, okay, fine. So, but the the CPS prosecutor, instead of dealing with what you pleaded guilty for, which was
Section 5 harassment.
No,
Section 5.
it wasn't harassment, it was the use of
words,
abusive words.
Yeah, words, yeah.
Right, so you pleaded guilty to use of abusive words, but in actual fact, you didn't use any words,
No.
and all of the evidence that they were going to bring against you was relating to video footage that they somehow construed as harassment. They were going to have a difficulty proving that, so you accepted your lawyer's advice, pleaded guilty to the use of threatening words or abusive words. So therefore, when she was talking to the magistrates to give them facts relating to the case,
Yeah.
she then stood up and lied. She
did.
said that your wife was using a camera. Well, your wife had already been acquitted.
She'd already
So
been acquitted,
therefore, your wife's actions were nothing to do with what you pleaded guilty
No.
for, and therefore the CPS prosecutor, what's her name?
Valera, Miss Valera.
Miss Valera, was actually lying in court.
Yeah.
And she was misleading the magistrates. She was not giving facts into relation of your use of words.
No.
She was just lying to somehow blacken the case. She was also distributing pictures that I believe came from downloaded from a website or social media.
They were pictures off Facebook.
Okay, well let's leave that there for one side. Pictures are also nothing to do with your use of words,
No.
which is oral,
Yeah.
all right? Which is what you pleaded guilty to,
Yeah.
an offence that you didn't commit. So nowhere were you charged or investigated for anything oral.
No.
But you pleaded guilty to it on the behest of your lawyer
As a plea bargain.
as a plea
Like
bargain.
do in America.
And then the CPS acted entirely unprofessional. At the minimum, this would have been gross misconduct, because she's lying to the court in relation to this, trying to implicate your wife, whose case had already been thrown out,
Yeah.
for using a mobile phone, which she was not doing,
No, she's behind my
right? So therefore, the CPS prosecutor was lying,
Yeah.
right?
100%.
This then caused you to make a complaint to her, the next level up, to the CPS.
Yeah. In relation to her.
This is the letter,
No.
a letter of an allegation in relation to her.
No, I didn't write that. That's what they wrote back.
Yeah, they wrote back.
Yeah.
You wrote a letter to the CPS,
Yeah.
which was dealt with by this person, Tim Cole,
Tim Cole.
who is the Senior District Crown Prosecutor, who replied in relation to Ms Valera's lying
Yeah.
to the magistrates. Now this is the critical part.
Yeah.
At the minimum, what she did was gross misconduct. Misconduct in public office is an indictable criminal offence.
Yeah.
That is the minimum. At the maximum, what she did, she committed another common law criminal offence, of the common law criminal offence of perjury, by making a false statement as a matter of public record, because the court will have a record of everything that is said.
The transcript.
Yes.
Yeah.
So she has made an untrue statement, and the making of an untrue statement as a matter of public record is where there is a false statement made that is not covered by the 1911 Perjury Act. Because the 1911 Perjury Act is only to do with people giving evidence. She was not giving evidence, but she was lying. So therefore, the common law criminal offence of Regina versus Sud will apply, which covers the gaps in the 1911 Perjury Act, which only applies if it's under oath. Sud applies to anything that is not under oath, that is a matter of public record. And you brought this to the attention of Mr. Tim
Cole.
who then replied to you with this letter, and he doesn't address the fact that at the minimum she committed misconduct in public office, gross misconduct by lying.
He said she wasn't under oath, so it didn't matter.
Yeah, but hold it, whether she was under oath or whether she
I
wasn't,
hear what you're saying, but that's what you
she has committed an offence of lying.
Yeah.
Lying is misconduct.
Yeah.
Misconduct in public office is a criminal offence, and he exonerates her of that. And in the case of the more serious, that is at the minimum. At the minimum, it's misconduct in public office. At the maximum, she's committed a common law criminal offence under Regina versus Sud, which is making false statements.
Yeah.
Can you read what he says about that?
The clarification, a person can only commit perjury if they lie on oath. Clearly, a prosecutor does not give evidence on oath, so there can be no suggestion of perjury. If there was information that was inaccurate, your solicitor had the opportunity to address these matters when presenting mitigation on your behalf.
Right, but he has not dealt with, where did he deal with the Regina versus Sud in here?
No,
Family group?
no, he didn't.
Oh right, well
That's the other
but basically you brought to his attention
Yeah.
that she's committed misconduct in public office at the minimum by lying,
Yeah.
and at the maximum there was a breach, not of the Perjury Act,
No.
because you don't have to be under oath to commit a criminal offence of perjury under Regina versus Sud, which
Yeah.
is a common law criminal offence of
Case
perjury.
law, yeah.
Case law, yes. So, first of all, we've had Tim Cole
Tim Cole, yeah.
has written this letter basically covering up for the misconduct of Elizabeth Valera, with her lying in court to the magistrates, basically to blacken your case. And she's lying about things that supposedly your wife did, which is nothing to do with you using
Foul or abusive words, no.
foul or abusive words, which is what you pleaded guilty to,
But I didn't do it.
but you didn't do it.
No.
And because Mr. Tim Cole, who is a senior district Crown Prosecutor and paid a salary commensurate with that, on behalf of the Dorset people, paid by Dorset taxpayers, right? And all Mr. Cole is doing is covering up for Elizabeth Valera's misconduct. He himself probably is committing misconduct in public office doing that. So you reported him for misconduct in office
Yeah.
to the next level up above him.
Which is
So you've reported Mr.
Cole.
Cole
To
for
take-
misconduct in public office, for covering up
Yeah.
the lying in court
Yeah.
and the misconduct of the prosecutor,
Elizabeth Valera.
Elizabeth Valera.
And I reported to Kate Brown. Kate Brown is the head Crown Prosecutor of, not of Dorset, but of the Wessex
Division.
based in Portsmouth.
Yeah, and right. And so she has then asked a Mr. Steve Houlihan, who's written this letter,
Yeah.
right, and he is supposed to have then investigated the misconduct allegation of Elizabeth Valera
And Tim Cole.
and Tim Cole covering up
Yeah.
the misconduct of Elizabeth Valera. And so to set it out clearly, what we're saying is, at the minimum, Elizabeth Valera committed misconduct in public office by lying,
Yeah.
and at the maximum, she committed a common law criminal offence of perjury under Regina versus Sud, which is an offence of perjury that is not under oath. It's a matter of public record.
Under the 1911 Perjury Act.
So it's not part, it's to bolster the 1911 Perjury Act, which is statute law,
Yeah.
which relates to perjury under oath, and Regina versus Sud is case law, common law, which fills in the gaps of the 1911 Act. He should know that. So he should know, as a qualified, legally qualified person, Steve Houlihan, who is the Deputy Chief Crown Prosecutor for Wessex, he's second in command for the whole list.
Yeah.
So he then covers up, in this letter, he then covers up
Yeah.
the offence committed by
Elizabeth Valera and Tim Cole.
and Tim Cole.
Yeah.
Both of those offences are misconduct in public office over her lying. So he's now committing the offence of misconduct in public office because he gives a bullshit letter
Yeah.
covering up and saying that Valera did not lie, and even if she did lie, it didn't matter. Oh no, that was the previous
No,
person.
he said, he said that, yeah.
The previous person you complained
Cole,
about,
Tim Cole.
his attitude basically is Valera didn't lie, but even if she did lie,
She was under oath.
because it wasn't under oath, it
Yeah.
didn't matter. So he's ignoring that it was still misconduct. And if it was misconduct in public office, it was a criminal offence.
Yeah.
So that caused the basis of the complaint to this person,
Yeah.
who is the number 2 in the command for the
But
CPS.
he's been given it.
Yeah, but he is still number 2 in command.
Yeah, he is, yeah.
He's the second highest person for the Wessex region, and he's paid a salary commensurate with that. And by him covering up the misconduct of the other two, I would argue that he's committed a criminal offence of misconduct in public office. So I'm stating on this video that the second in command CPS prosecutor, Steve Houlihan, has committed a criminal offence of misconduct in public office by covering up the misconduct of its 2 subordinates. But more importantly was his corruption of the law in this letter. He's been given the facts that Regina versus Sud, making a false statement as a matter of public record, is a common law criminal offence of perjury. It's got nothing to do with being under oath. How he dismisses that is quite simply in this letter. He's saying that he doesn't agree with it. Well, I'm afraid you can have a Colombian drugs dealer who doesn't agree with the fact that the police have prosecuted him for importing cocaine into Britain. Just saying I don't agree with it doesn't mean to say that you're not guilty of an offence. And he, in his position, should know that. Have we got the section here?
Yeah. Well, he's referring to you, obviously. He says, whilst your associate may consider that the offence is made out because of a court record, I do not consider that he is correct. I do not consider that there is any evidence of Miss Valera lying to or misleading the court.
Right, well he says there's no evidence, and yet she said it in front of your wife, who was a material witness.
By associate means you, because you pointed out to me about Regina versus Subject.
Yeah, well that's fair enough. Yeah. And he also has the right to disagree with me, but it's a bullshit answer. Yeah. He's using that to cover up their misconduct.
Right.
And when he says where he's actually indicted himself here, is he said there is no evidence of her lying.
Yeah.
Well, of course, there's a court recording.
There's a recording, yeah.
And also, there is a material witness, because she was lying about you to the magistrates, but in reference to your wife, and your wife was there.
So were our two solicitors.
Yes, but your wife was there, and your legal representation
heard
Elizabeth Valera say that your wife was
using a mobile phone to film the
victim.
The victim, yeah.
Well, in actual fact, one, that was not true.
It's absolutely untrue.
And two, it wasn't relevant to brief the magistrates to the offence that you pleaded guilty to, which was using
threatening words,
which you, of course, never did and was never charged or investigated with. Yeah. The whole thing was in relation to a garden gnome somehow.
Garden gnome, yeah.
Garden gnome somehow, and pictures on social media somehow being a matrix that amounted to harassment. And then they couldn't prove that, so they spent all that money, and the only money they got back was a £140 fine for an offence you pleaded guilty to that you didn't commit.
Yeah.
And now they're spending a huge amount of money in the wake of it all, covering up the lies and
their hourly rate to write those letters must be, you know.
But what is more important, in this letter from Stephen Houlihan, when I read it, he's also admitted that the prosecution of your wife did not meet the CPS threshold, and yet the police spent all that money preparing.
He said that he's categorically said it didn't meet the threshold test of the Code of Crown Prosecutors. In other words, the police charged her without referring to it.
Yeah, the police. Yeah. Yes, the police spent all that money.
And then tried to have a remand in custody.
Preparing all this, going to court, and when the CPS finally got it, it did not meet the threshold test. And he admits here that the pursuit of your wife did not meet the threshold test. Well, because your wife and you were charged with the same offence, that meant that yours didn't meet the threshold test either. Well, but he fudges that in this letter.
He does fudge it, yeah.
And the reason he fudges it is because you pleaded guilty to a completely different offence.
So he says it's now irrelevant.
So it's now irrelevant.
That's right, yeah.
So the fact that it didn't meet the threshold test and all this money was spent is irrelevant. Well, I'm afraid, Mr. Steve Houlihan, it's not relevant because it's cost the Dorset ratepayers money. And you, the Dorset ratepayers, are paying six-figure salaries for people like this to cover up misconduct when they should be facing criminal allegations of misconduct in public office themselves. This is serious. It might be over a trivial matter, but when these officials do this, it is serious. Because these people are the checks and balances in life, but they're doing it at your expense. They're paid six-figure salaries at your expense, the taxpayer's expense, when you people are having measures of austerity placed against you.
And I think that's the tip of the iceberg.
The tip of the iceberg.
Police and